How do you view religion in this contest between good ideas and bad ideas? And for me, religion emphatically gets placed on the side of bad and old and worth retiring ideas, or ideas worth retiring. And I guess by analogy, I would ask you to consider astrology. Right now, maybe I can just get a sense of who I'm talking to. What percentage of you, I want to know, believe in astrology, which is to say, who among you, and you can signal this by applause or howls of enthusiasm, what percentage of you, let me just spell it out so you know what you're committing to, and you know how crazy your neighbor is, in fact. What percentage of you believe that human personalities and human events and the difference between good and bad luck in a human life is the result of what the planets are doing against the background of stars? Let's hear it. Somebody out there. Okay, so now you should know that something like 25% of your neighbors believe that. Oh, there you go. So I'm here. Wait. I'm hearing a heckler among the astrologers. Is that possible? This is the first astrological heckler I've heard. You must be an Aries, sir. So it won't surprise you. I have a related question, which is, what percentage of you, I want to know, are religious? Which is to say, who among you believe in God, a personal God, a God that can hear prayers, a God that can take an interest in the lives of human beings and occasionally enforce good outcomes versus bad outcomes? Who among you, and now again, I want to hear applause or silence, believe in that sort of God? Okay, so this is my concern. This is my concern with what Jordan has been saying and writing these many months. I feel that you're in danger of misleading this second group of people. That the way you talk about God has convinced and will continue to convince some percentage of humanity that it's fine to hold on to this old sort of God, this God that can hear prayers and that can intervene or not in the lives of human beings. And as we've begun to explore, I think there are a lot of problems with that kind of belief. If nothing else, there are many such gods on offer, and devotion to them becomes irreconcilable among true believers. And my concern is that you could do exactly what you do with religion with astrology, right? It would be no more legitimate to obfuscate the boundary between clear thinking and superstition there, because this traditional God and the doctrines that support him are on no firmer ground than astrology is now today. And astrology, almost everything you say about religion, it's the fact that it has organized human thinking for thousands of years, that it's a cultural universal, that every group of people has given rise to some form of it, that it has archetypal significance, that it has powerful stories. All of that can be said about astrology. And in fact, some additional things can be said about astrology that would argue in its favor. For instance, astrology is profoundly egalitarian. There's no bad zodiac sign. Whoever you are, everyone's got a great zodiac sign, and it's just an inconvenient fact of the discipline that if I read you Charles Manson's horoscope, 95% of the audience would find it relevant, and that's how easily falsifiable astrology is. But my concern is that we could live in a world where societies are shattered over things like different zodiac interpretations, and we don't live in that world for good reason, because we have beaten astrology into submission. And I would say that religion, in terms of revealed religion and belief in a personal God, is over the centuries getting the same treatment by science and rationality, and should be. And it is a perverse circumstance that we live in a world that is shattered by religion. Yeah.
So I think what I'll do first is adopt the exceptionally difficult and likely counterproductive position of saying something not so much in defense of religion, but in defense of astrology, knowing full well that that's fundamentally a fool's errand. But there's something I want to point out, is that, first of all, astrology was astronomy in its nascent form. And astrology was also science in its nascent form, just like alchemy was chemistry in its nascent form. And so sometimes you have to dream a crazy dream with all of the error that that crazy dream entails, because you have an intuition that there's something there to motivate you to develop the intuition to the point where it actually becomes of genuine practical utility. Now, when we look back on the astrologers and we view their contributions to the history of the world with contempt, we should also remember that the people who built Stonehenge, for example, and the first people who determined that our fates were in part written in the stars, were people whose astrological beliefs were indistinguishable from their astronomical beliefs. And you might think, well, in what sense is your fate written in the stars? And I would say it's certainly the case insofar as there are such things as cosmic regularities. So it was the dream of astrology that there was some relationship between the movement of the planetary bodies and the fixed stars and human destiny, and that's what drove us to build the first astronomical observatories, and to also determine that there was a proper time for planting and a proper time for harvesting, and a way of orienting yourself in the world, for example, by using the North Star. It's also the poetic ground that enabled us to identify the notion that you could look up and orient yourself towards the heavens, and that there was a metaphorical relationship between that and positioning yourself properly in life. And at a deeper level, the cosmos was the place that the human imaginative drama was externalized and draped itself out into the world as something that was essentially observable, so that we could derive great orienting fictions from the observation of our imagination. And so part of the problem that Sam is pointing to is the difficulty of distinguishing valid poetic impulse from invalid poetic impulse, and that really is a tremendous problem. You see that arise also in people who have religious delusions attendant upon manic depressive disorder or schizophrenia. But so much of what eventually manifests itself as hardcore pragmatic scientific belief has its origin in wild flights of poetic fantasy. And it's also the case, by the way, that that's actually how your brain is organized, as far as I can tell, that when you, and it isn't just me, there's a very large, what would you call it, research literature outlining the relative functions of the right and left hemisphere, and it certainly appears to be the case that when we encounter something absolutely unknowable or unknown, what we do is drape that unknown thing in fantasy as a first pass approximation to the truth, and then refine that fantasy as a consequence of iterative critical analysis. And so Sam believes that what should happen is that the poetic and fictional domain should be supplanted by the rational domain.